Alright, in this problem here, we're going to go ahead and use the same method that we've seen in the other two problems. Let's take a look at it. So we have 2m squared minus 13m plus 20. Now I want you to think, just by looking at it, is there anything that we can factor out of these numbers that they all share in common? And if you notice, if you look at this negative 13, that's a prime number. So you know at this point, with that being a prime number, there's nothing that we can factor out of it. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and use the trick that I showed you. We're going to go through and multiply our coefficient to our constant, our leading terms coefficient to our constant, and we're going to go from there. So I'm not going to write any steps, we're just going to work it out. So let's go ahead and let's start with this value. So I'm going to take my 2 and I'm going to multiply that to positive 20. And 2 times 20 is going to give me 40. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my negative 13m, and I'm going to bring down my m squared. Now that I got this done, I want to go ahead and look at my factors of 40. So my factors of 40 are going to be 1 times 40, 2 times 20, 4 times 10, and we could go ahead and do 5 times 8. So keep in mind, I want to look at these numbers and say if I combine these two terms, I want to be able to see if they can either add together to give me 13 or they can subtract to give me 13. So either way you would like to think about it. So let's go and look at 1 to 40. If I add 1 to 40, it gives me 41. If I subtract 1 from 40, it gives me 39. So it can't be that one. 2 and 20, that gives me either 18 or 22, depending on if I add or subtract 2. Can't be that one. 4 and 10, that would give me a 6 and a 14. It's close, but not quite. 5 and an 8, if I add them together, I can get a 13. So I know that this is going to be my factors, 5 and 8. So let's go ahead and we're going to move this over using those factors. So what I'm going to have is I'm going to have m, and we'll say with a 5, and then I'm going to have an m and an 8. So at this point I need to think about, what are my signs? What are they going to be? Now I want you to think about this. Notice our middle term is negative. So whenever I subtract, I need to be subtracting. My largest number needs to be negative in order for me to have a negative value. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and I'm going to make my 8 negative. Now if I make my 8 negative and I make my 5 positive, I want you to think about this for a moment. That would give me a negative 3, and that's not quite where I need to be. So since I need to be at negative 13, I'm also going to have a negative 5. That way I can combine those two. Another way that we could have looked at this in order to figure out we needed to have negative signs is we could have said, well, we end up with a final term that's positive. And this final term that's positive, this 40, we can get a positive if we multiply a negative times a negative. So I know this is correct. I know these are my two values that I have, and I just need to finish the process. So my next step is to go ahead and take this 2, right, that we went ahead and multiplied to our constant, and we now need to divide each one of these integers by 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So divide those by 2, and I'm going to rewrite it now. So I have m minus 5, and remember we take this denominator if it can't be simplified any further, and we move it up front. So that's going to be 2m minus 5. And then 2 can go into 8 4 times. So for this one, we're going to have m minus 4. And notice we have a negative being divided by a positive. So it is going to remain negative. Same thing here, negative, right? It's being divided by a positive. So now that we have 2m minus 5 and m minus 4, we are done, and that is our final answer. So that's my answer. Now, do we want to check it? Well, we could. So let's go ahead, let's check it. So if we want to check it, we could go ahead and FOIL it real quick. We could say 2m minus 5 times m minus 4, and 2m times m is going to give me 2m squared. 2m times negative 4 is going to give me negative 8m. Negative 5 times m gives me negative 5m. And negative 5 times negative 4 gives me a positive 20. If we combine our like terms right here in the middle, that's going to turn out to be negative 13m. Bring down my 20. Bring down my 2m squared. And notice that's what we started out with right there. So we start out with 2m squared minus 13m plus 20. That's what we have up here, 2m squared minus 13m plus 20. So that is our answer. We know it's correct because we checked it.